All right. Welcome to Bold and Unapologetic Bad Chapters, Great Stories. Today's episode is the first episode of a series I'm doing titled Let's Normalize This, where we talk about things that should be, well, normal, and sadly aren't for reasons that are either unhealthy or toxic, and just breaking down those barriers in each episode that we do. Joining me today is my dear friend Roshni Ladden, who's co-hosting this episode with me, who are in her own right is a strong, classy lady who has some great insight to share about this topic as well. Roshni, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm very honored
Cool.
to be here.
I know. I'm like, I'll talk to them about it later in the episode. But I'm like, there's a reason why I asked you to be on this episode, which I'll tell you, later. But I'm really excited because I feel like this topic, it sounds small, but I feel like it's so much deeper than people give it credit for. You know.
It definitely is. It definitely goes deep for me too. So I agree with you, and I was very excited about this topic. It's a little bit
Yes.
funny trying to tell my husband about it though.
Yeah, I bet. It's like, what are you guys talking
Yeah.
about? It's funny. As we were talking about this topic, I started thinking about, I was like, I can actually remember when I started cursing, as weird as that sounds. Like, I actually remember because it was a conscious choice. And I was in the fourth grade, and I had friends of mine around me that were cursing. And so it kind of picked it up because, you want to be cool and whatever. And on top of that, like, it didn't, and I remember someone made a comment. I wish I could remember who it was, but somebody made a comment like that it didn't suit me to curse or something like that. So I was like, because I was very like, I'm very petite and like delicate looking, or like my baby face. So I guess people are like, don't expect it from me. And so it was just one of those things that do you remember like when you started cursing at all?
Yeah, I do actually. I mean, I can't say like, oh, on this day was the first time
Oh
I
yeah,
said
no.
fuck. But but I do remember that in fifth grade is when I really started cursing. A lot of friends were cursing, like you
Yeah.
said. And it was funny because I would maybe accidentally like slip up and curse in front of my mom
Mhm.
or my sister, and my mom would be like, "Where do you learn that?" And I just look at her and be like, "From you." Like, yeah, I
It's
mean,
just
you
so
don't say
funny.
that to your mom because
No,
then it's just
right.
gonna get worse. But for
Anytime I
you,
say anything to my parents where it's like, I learned this from you, like when they give me a hard time, they get so mad. I'm like, what?
right?
It's like a mirror
Like,
image.
no, couldn't possibly. Who, me? So yeah, definitely around fifth grade. And I just remember feeling really cool. Like I just felt like empowered. Like I was like, yes, I have a power about me because I can say these words.
Right. Well, I think we give them power in society. Like, I think, and that's another thing, like, where, words have power and words have weight. And so I think it's a good thing and a bad thing. We could talk about like the good and the bad, but there's just something where I started thinking about when I thought of this topic, the double standards, because there's such a double standard when it comes to whether men are cursing or whether women are cursing. Like, for example, it's kind of a control thing. I find that men really like when women are portrayed as like delicate, you're like a damsel in distress. And like, like I've actually heard someone be like, you're too strong and you make a man feel emasculated. But I'm like, but I don't do that. I like prop men up. But I can do things on my own. Like I can build something from IKEA, like by myself. So it's like I like
For the half.
I can open the jar by myself. Is that bad? But I think men like to be like their egos like to be stroked and pleased, like,
Yeah.
and I think that kind of comes down to it a little bit. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that there is an aspect of society teaching us that men are masculine, they can use these words, they can be more aggressive, more rough, and the power that we've given these words is that they're more aggressive and they are more rough. And so therefore they belong to the masculine gender, men, right? Or what we gender as masculine.
Yep.
And so I think part of that and part of men wanting to feel needed is also a consequence of toxic masculinity,
Yeah.
which it comes out of, like if we're going to say that, oh, women are the caretakers and women are the nurturers of the children, well, men need to feel needed or taken care, feel like they're needed or caring for something in some way.
Yeah.
So I think that in that way, they then want us to act like we need them more than we
Yeah, like, it's just like,
do.
because there's this whole thing from, like, even when this is gonna sound really, like, I'm dating, I'm gonna go way back to, like, for people that are religious, like Adam and Eve, right? There's this whole thing, like, Eve was created to please Adam, right? She was meant to be his entertainment. And so for us, it's like, I've heard men be like, I like when you're, all spiffy and nice and classy and ladylike. Like, what is that line? Like, oh my God, that line from that song, a lady and lady in the streets, but a freak in the bed. You know what I'm saying?
Oh God, yeah.
But I'm
Lady
just
in
saying,
the
like,
streets, but a freak in the street in the sheets.
yes, but I'm just saying, like, that. But I always, that line makes me laugh. But it's just one of those things where men like to see a lady be a lady. But it's like, what constitutes being a lady? Who defined that? Like, why can't a lady also cuss every now and again? Like, I just feel like a good cuss word, It's like, and it comes down to even professionalism. Like, for example, I'm like, you can't tell me that Jeff Bezos or Steve Jobs or whoever doesn't throw a cuss word around here and there, and it takes nothing away from them. But I bet you if a woman CEO dropped an F-bomb, it'd be like a thing.
Yeah.
Like,
I completely agree. I mean, I have accidentally dropped curse words in meetings with supervisors who have in that same meeting cursed
mm-hmm.
and they're male supervisors. But when I did it, I mean, I get that there's also the power dynamic of I'm their subordinate.
Yeah.
And I apologized immediately, like, oh my God, I'm sorry. But it was a deal. Like it
Right.
was an issue. And it feels like there's a gender issue there. Even
Right.
when I had I had this interviewing skills workshop at Rowan University. And sorry, I didn't mean to call out Rowan.
That's okay.
But there was this gentleman who was all about like the roles, right? And he was like, women to your interviews wear a skirt because they want to know that you are feminine in these interviews. Well, I was sitting there in my pantsuit and I was shaking my leg and I was like
Power suit.
fuming, and he was like, and make sure to use soft language. What does that mean?
But by the way, it's not to his detriment. It's because society is like told us that this is, it's funny, like,
Right.
society has made us believe that this is how a woman has to portray herself to be taken seriously. And you know what I've been told? I've been told wear red to interviews as a woman because it shows that you're powerful. And I'm like, okay. I mean, I'm powerful no matter what color I wear. Or if you want to, like, be portrayed as like calm and cool and collected, wear blue. And I'm like, all right. But as a woman, I'm told that I don't think men could wear those crazy funny socks, right? And nobody gives two craps. And I'm like, if I wore crazy funny socks, you'd be like, what are you doing? I once had a coworker who wore gym shorts to an interview. We actually laughed because we could see him. This was like back when I was working at a bank and I was in college. But I'm like, but because he was like this guy and all this, he got the job. And I was like, if I'd shown up in shorts to an interview, I would have never, ever gotten it. But he was like an attractive young guy and he got the job. And I'm like, okay. But yeah, it is about how we have to portray ourselves based on our gender. And it's like such a shame to have to say that. But that's why I want to talk about it and normalize it. It's like, no, we got to blow this shit wide open because it's not acceptable. Like, I should be able to just be myself, be accepted for who I am. You shouldn't think any less of me. And it's funny you said something about supervisors. Now that I'm thinking about it, my previous supervisor was a male and I handled myself with him more. Like, I didn't curse. I was like very, but now I have a female supervisor. I curse all the time. I'm like very much more lax. And now that I'm thinking about it, I'm like, I think because she's a woman, like, I think she can get me being frustrated or upset or wanting to drop a curse word here and there. But I didn't feel that same level of comfort being my full self outside of the professional barik with my male supervisor. And that's a very interesting thing. I didn't even think about that until you mentioned it. Weird. See, me holding
Makes a lot of sense though.
Yeah, and that's me holding myself back because you want your supervisor to see you in a positive light, obviously.
Right. And it's hard to know what double standards which men hold.
Right. And that's the thing. And I have to say, I pride myself on the fact that he always saw me in a positive light until today. And I'm like, yeah, I don't think he's ever seen the other side of me, and I don't even know. It's like funny. So with cursing especially, I feel like it makes us feel a kind of way. I don't know about you, but I always say, like, for me, if I like drop a good F-bomb, it's like a dopamine shot to my brain. Like, it just makes me happy. I don't know. But how does it make you feel like when you curse or drop a curse word? Like, it's, you know,
I still just hang on to like that fifth grade feeling. I just feel really cool. Like I feel powerful. When I'm sitting there with my friends and I'm telling them a story, they can expect from me that I'll drop several curse words. Like, and they know that's just who I am. I end up talking a New York accent. I sound like I've got an edge to me. All of a sudden, I'm like, I could be on The Sopranos or something. I don't know. But I just feel really fucking cool
yeah.
whenever I use curse words, and I feel like I just, got my leather jacket and could go
I
take
know.
on
It's
like
just like
a
it kind
ticket
of
or
it makes you
something.
feel like a badass, I think. It's very
Yes.
empowering, like you said, and it's like, and for some people it's a painkiller. Like, I've seen people, like, when you're upset with somebody or there's like a really bad situation going on, I mean, people like use expletives to like get their emotions out and express themselves, express their pain, and I find that that's sometimes it's cathartic. Like, I'm like, why censor yourself? And I know we were talking about this before, but like before we started recording, but for me, when I watch a movie, like I'm on watching like TBS and they like censor a movie that has curse words in it, I get so disappointed because I'm like, but that's the funny part. Like, I feel like sometimes it makes things really funny. Like, I laugh so hard at really inappropriate jokes, and then when they censor everything, and I'm just like, dang it, you ruined it. I was like,
What's actually funny about that is that I was just watching Sex and the City the other day,
yeah,
and they were trying to censor the word asshole,
okay,
but they only censored the word hole.
uh,
And so it was like, "You're my ass." And it was like, what?
yeah, they do
You
it
censored
really
the wrong
weird.
word if you're going to
Or they
censor it.
change the word so it's like they're saying it, but then it's like butthole.
Right. And
Like,
the
okay,
same
I
thing
hate
happens on the radio. But it's just to go back to what you said real quick about like it being a painkiller, I completely agree with that. I mean, I think that for me, one of the reasons I started cursing, besides the fact that I felt cool, was also just because I was in a very powerless situation growing up.
yeah,
And so this was a way to like give myself back that power and give myself back something, you know, I was in a powerless situation in terms of like my family life, and then also in terms of like in school, I was an ugly duckling. So,
same.
matured
That's
now,
really
but I was an
bad. I
ugly
had a phase.
duckling at the time, and kids are mean. And so this was my way of just like, yeah, no, I have tough skin. Look at me. Like you can't get to me. And so it is that empowering factor, but it also is like on that deeper level of just like nobody's going to tell me what to do or hold me down
Yeah,
anymore,
I love that. Oh, I love that for you, Roshni.
yeah.
It's just like, so I just like people being able to express themselves in whatever way. And it's funny, this is actually going to go to why I chose, like, I asked you to be on the podcast with me, because
Oh
I
gosh.
find that people who curse, like especially women who curse, I find them to be so down to earth and relatable. And I remember like when we would talk and then like you would drop curse words here and there, I'm like, she's my kind of people. Like, it's just like friends. Because it just like makes me, it just, I don't know, it just makes you like, you don't, I don't want to say pretentious, because I don't mean to, like, if you don't curse and that's your thing, it's totally fine. But I find that people sometimes try too hard to portray a certain image that might not be fully authentic to who they are.
Mhm.
I mean, you can't, for me, I'm like, I find it very unrealistic that you don't go your entire life without dropping like a couple curse words here and there. Like, you must want to express that sentiment in some, like, road rage. No, like, you don't want to like be like, hey, you motherfucker, like, it's like you just want to go off on somebody, like, and even if it's just to yourself in the car, like I do that sometimes where I'm like, oh, but if my son's in the car, like we'll talk about this later, but like if my son's in the car, I'm like, I'll catch myself, I'll be like, oh, fudge. I'm like, I was like, dang. I was like, but yeah, I think it's something that makes people like click. I just click with people that find that they're comfortable enough to do that. Like, I find that they're being authentic to themselves.
No, I completely agree with you. And it's interesting that you say that because my husband actually like doesn't really curse and he finds people who do curse sloppy. So we've had a lot of conversations about this because I've been like, I get that you think I'm sloppy, but this is who I am and I actually like that about me that I curse.
Right.
Which sounds weird to say,
It does. It is.
But
I mean, I'll say the
I
same
like
thing.
that about me. I like that, like, I don't give a rat's ass about what anyone, thinks about me.
Yeah.
That I'm gonna say what I want and do what I want and be how I want. Like, I'm gonna express myself to the fullest, like you were saying.
I wonder if you and I are like that because it's a trauma response. Because you and I have gone through separate traumas,
Hmm.
but I wonder if that's like like an extreme trauma response where we're just like, you know what? You've always tried to suppress me and who I am, so I'm gonna be like full blown who I am. This is me, like fully blown. So it's like, I wonder, it's because
Miley Cyrus can't be tamed. Thank you very much.
right, like, and it's funny because like Miley does some things that are like out there, but I always found that I have a respect for her because I'm like, man, she really doesn't give two f's. And I
Yeah.
wish I could get to that level. Like I'm working toward it, but like,
The
could I get
irony
to
that
that
you just
level?
said two F's.
I know. I do say F's a lot. I say, but I just think it's funny. Like I actually, you know what I say all the time, and it's not censoring myself. I actually just think the phrase is funny, which is anything AF. So I'll be like, or I'll be like, oh, that was crazy as fuck. Like I say it, and I think it's funny, so I make myself
Got
laugh.
it. Gotcha. It's more like a stylistic move.
Yes,
I like it. I can dig
it's just tweaking it a little bit.
it.
Um, actually, so I was gonna give you an example. So there's an example that I forgot about, so I was prepping for this episode, which was so Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib, I think a couple years ago. I want to say it was soon after she got elected. They asked her about Trump, and they were what do you feel about him, or something like that, or something about her kids. I can't remember, but she basically said, we're going to impeach the motherfucker." And she got so much heat, so much so that like Nancy Pelosi stepped in and I think kind of pressured her to apologize, which I hate because that means Nancy Pelosi is feeding into this ideal like women are supposed to act a certain way,
Mhm.
and it's not professional, it's not respectful, which I get to a certain extent, but a part of me is just like she's also expressing a sentiment that so many people in this country feel. And then on top of that, like, I mean, you had Donald Trump saying grab them by the, I'm not going to say that works. I just personally don't like it. But, he's out there saying these things about women and then a woman pressuring a woman to not be her. Like, I just found that it didn't sit well with me or like didn't have a good taste in my mouth from it. Um, like, I get that she's a congresswoman and you should be tasteful in terms of the curses and when you want to do it. But I think it was like such a natural thing for her to say. And I actually respected her more for expressing herself and being like, that's how I feel. I thought it was kind of badass of her, but I don't know. What do you think?
No, I mean, I agree. I think that I get the professionalism piece, and yet there has to be a level of humanity. You'll see in the older generations that they like stick very much to this is professional, this is professional for a woman, this is professional for a man, right? That's
Right.
why, like, if you look at dress codes, for example, they're separated by this is what women should wear, but this is what men should wear. And those are like old ass dress codes, right? They need to be rewritten to be gender neutral AF. And so that's the thing. So when you look at the newer generation is the generation that comes to an interview in gym shorts. And I don't necessarily agree with that. I think there's still got to be a modicum of professionalism there.
Agreed.
You should be putting your best foot forward. And yet our generation and later generations are believing more in a holistic and humanistic work environment. They
Right.
don't want this work environment where you go in your blazer and your suit and everything all prim proper and you sit at your desk perfectly still and tight, right?
Right.
They want a work environment like what? And not that I'm giving Mark Zuckerberg much credit for anything, except that all of his employees, like the dress code at Facebook to come to work was jeans, a button down, and sneakers. Like that was the dress code because we're looking for something more lax. If we spend 40 hours of our week here,
Right.
most of our week waking hours are working hours.
Yeah.
Then we want to be comfortable in our own skin. And so I think
It's
Congresswoman,
true.
Rashida should have that right as well. She should be able to express herself if he's going to express himself this way and get away with it. And if that's her example of professionalism in government,
I just feel like
then
damned
say
if
what
you
you
do
got
and
to say.
damned if you don't. Like for me, like I mean, we talked about this. I want to run for office one day, but a part of me is like, but I feel like I have to then censor myself and mold myself into what a politician is known to be. But I was like, why can't we change the definition of what that looks like? Because
Right.
for me, I'm like, I think the American people in voting in Donald Trump, they wanted a non-politician, right? Like they wanted something different. So I feel like the American people are progressing. I don't understand why we have to be like, let me just get my tie and like, come on. Like, I just want to, like, I was like, I just want to, I can be professional. I know how to speak. I mean, you've seen me at work meetings. I know how to speak. I know how to present myself. I know what people want. I listen. But at the same time, if I want to drop a curse word or here or there, because that's what I feel in my heart is appropriate in that given moment, then I should be allowed to. And I shouldn't be thought of any less for it. That's really like, it's the I see you less now piece that really I think gets under my skin a little bit. Like it's dismissing everything I've ever shown and everything I'm saying and then just focusing on that. And I'm like,
right. As though it's like a transgression, which it's not. And I
right.
think a good example of the modern day politician of what the American people want to see is not Donald Trump, but AOC, Alexandria
I love her
Ocasio-Cortez.
so much.
I think
I'm such a huge
she
fan.
is the modern
And I feel like I think
definition
she
of
could
what a
probably
politician.
drop an F bomb or two. I mean, she hasn't because she's like professional and stuff, but I just feel like she could if she wanted to, like,
She has
I approve
though.
it. Hey,
I think that
AOC, if
she
you
is
listen,
a first here and there in some
has she?
places. I think I think
I
I've
haven't
seen it. I
heard.
can't say for sure because I don't
I mean,
remember.
they hate on her for anything. So I'm just like, she
But
probably
she
did.
just comes right back swinging. I mean, I'm
I
proud of her.
know. I just love her so much. She is like a badass. Like she, for me, is
She's
like
a
the
legend.
definition of badass and classy all in one. I'm just like, you go, you
Mhm.
get them, girl.
Yeah,
So
I
here's
know.
a question: Do you have any curse words that are off limits?
Yeah, I mean, I think that any word that is used in a derogatory fashion or to like insult an entire group of people is off limits. So the P word that Donald used, the C word
Yep.
that a lot of Europeans use it very casually, the
Yep.
way kind of we would use the word bitch. I don't even really love the word bitch, to be
Yeah.
honest. Um, and you had mentioned when we were meeting before this, the FAG word, but like and the R word is
Yeah.
definitely
R
off.
word,
Like
FAG.
any of those, like I wouldn't even consider curse words. I would just consider them like derogatory insults that
Yeah,
are
it's
used.
offensive.
Yeah,
I mean, like,
even when people use the word gay as like an insult, or it's
right.
just
Believe it or not, that was a hard habit for me to break because growing up, like everybody was saying that, right?
it's very normal
And
then.
then
Mhm.
once I started working more with like diversity, equity, inclusion, and working with friends that were very much about inclusive language, it helped me break that habit because I would say it and I would love my friends because they'd be like, you want to pick another word? And I'm like, oh yeah, I'm so sorry. Because they knew my intention was never that. It was just like everyone was saying it growing up. And then all of a
Right.
sudden people became more cognizant and aware of the fact that like, no, this is actually offending a group of people. And it
Yeah.
was never my intention. It was just like a weird habit. And then,
Right.
but yeah, I find it's very harmful to people. And I'm like, I would never want to harm, like you said, an entire group of people because of a stupid curse word. Like, I'm not going to say it then. But my whole thing is like, if I find like I say curse words to express a sentiment. If I ever use it against someone, it's because of their actions or behavior toward me, and it's against that one individual. Um, but I also like don't even get mad to that point anymore. My sentiment is like if I'm mad at just like a collective thing where I'm like, oh, fucking A, like like or something like that. But it's not anything. I don't feel like I have hate toward my heart to be using it like that, but I have seen it. Like I dated someone that would use the FAG word and CUNT, and we would fight about it all the time. I'm like, what? Stop using these words. I'm like, they are offensive and I absolutely hate them. And I mean, he got better at it as we progressed, but I was just like so offended because I don't represent the populations that are offended, but it still bothers me for them. Like you could use a different word. I don't understand what's the problem here. It's just not respectful. Like I find that there is a line between respect and disrespect when it comes to a curse word, for sure.
Yes, absolutely. I agree. And that's where I've also had to figure out, because I know I said earlier, like about my husband who thinks that cursing is sloppy for anyone
Yeah.
who does it. And he's not, so like he doesn't really curse that often. So when he curses, I know that like, oh shit.
I'm in it now.
Something's wrong. I did something. So he doesn't curse that often, but we've had to have the conversation of like, I grew up in a household where expressing your anger meant yelling and it meant cursing
Yep.
and it meant calling each other names.
Yep.
Or not really each other because I grew up in an Indian household, so I was just getting called names because you can't disrespect your elders.
Yep.
So,
Oh yeah. That's a whole
but that's the household I grew up in. So when I would fight with my husband, you know, when we were boyfriend and girlfriend and we had a lot of big fights and we were working
Yep.
through our shit as you do, God, that's a whole, I want to go off on a tangent, but I won't.
I'll let you go on. I'm actually going to say something that's
episode.
probably going to increase your tangent, but that's okay. Go ahead.
But anyway, I had to learn that, like, okay, cursing when I stub my toe and saying, for fuck's sake, is totally different than saying you're a fucking asshole during a fight.
Right.
You know?
Right.
And also, to make it better, you could say you're being a fucking asshole, because that's not, that's just saying, identifying the behavior rather than his entire person.
Right. It's like, I didn't say
not great.
I just said what you did was. It's like a technicality though.
It's still not great. So I had to like figure out that differentiation of just like disrespect to an individual person, not even using derogatory words.
Right. Actually, the last relationship I was in highlighted that part, because I had the same problem where I was in a household where, like, when you're angry, you say hurtful things to people. And so I had to learn how to fight productively. And so that was something I hadn't learned in the past. So I do credit that relationship for that, because it definitely, like, I would go off, like, right when, like, you were triggered, you go off. And then he was very calm and be like, well, I don't talk to you that way. And I'm like, then I feel like the shame. Now I feel shame because you're right. Like, I actually, it took a lot out of me, but it was like, it humbled me a lot to be like, okay, there's a different way to do this now. And so now I actually like instill that in any arguments I have, where I keep my cool and I look at people and I'm like, there's no need to call names. And then, or I just express how them calling me names made me feel. And then they start to feel ashamed versus me. So I'm like, that was hurtful. Huh?
Yeah. Well, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're
just saying, it's interesting that you bring up the shame. That's like the other conversation that my husband and I have a lot, is because after we fight, if I escalate and I call him names, then I feel the shame too.
Yep.
But if he does something wrong that's, let's say, of equal or greater value, he feels guilt. And trying to like differentiate the shame from the guilt, that's like another
guilt or stepsisters.
We're stepsisters. Yeah.
Shame and guilt are literally stepsisters. I heard that someone said that to me the other day, and I was like,
oh, shame and guilt are stepsisters. Yeah.
They totally are. And they're actually, believe it or not, they're very they're toxic emotions, because we use them against each other. Like, I'm going to make you feel guilty because you made me feel shame. And it's like this toxic cycle. And unfortunately, in brown households, as we've grown up in, that's a very common thread that we have to unravel.
Consequence. Like, I'm not going to ground you. I was never grounded. So all my friends considered me lucky.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, you can take what I take. Have fun. But but we've had to have a lot of conversations around like the fact that the shame sticks around longer.
Right.
You know, guilt is like you kick yourself in the ass, you learn from it, you move on. Shame is like you feel it for days, you get anxiety, the insecurity builds, and now it's all of a sudden a new insecurity, or it's feeding an insecurity you already have, and that affects your self-worth in the relationship. And so like that is, you know, it's just been really interesting having to figure that out through like the fights and through the cursing and stuff.
Well, it's actually going to go tie into what I was going to say next, which is cursing when you're dating and cursing when you're married. Like, I find that because we shame people that curse, right? Especially women that curse. When I'm dating as a single person now, like, I find that I have to portray like this nice person. And like, obviously I am a nice person. Sorry, I am a nice person. Just because I curse here and there does not mean I'm not a nice person. But what I'm saying is, like, you know, you're on your best behavior, right? Like a first date, whatever. And so my best behavior does not include cursing, right? That's what I'm programmed to believe.
Right.
But now I make a conscious effort to actually, like, if I feel like I want to say a curse word, like, I'll say it, like shit. Like, if I say shit, like, oh man, I hate that shit, I'll say it, being very aware and being very conscious that this might turn this person away. But if it does, like, I have to actually give myself a pep talk. If this person does not want you because you said the word shit, then you don't want them you don't want them, because I feel like I need to be accepted. Like, don't make me feel like I have to be a certain thing for you to like me. And so, yeah, I find that it's a very interesting dynamic when you're trying to date and you're like my last relationship, the person cursed and had no issue with it. And so it made me comfortable to be fully myself. And that was something that I valued in that relationship because I could be fully myself and he was totally accepting of it, totally liked me for it. And so I was like, this is a nice feeling. I haven't had this in prior relationships. So, yeah.
Well, I'm
Good.
actually interested because do you get reactions when you curse on dates now?
Sometimes, but I find it to be very subtle. Like I've never had someone point it out or like say it
Okay.
directly, but I have heard it done to others. That's why I'm conscious of it. Where it's like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm not like I don't like when a girl curses. Like I've heard someone say that to somebody and I'm just like, really? Like that's like a deal breaker or like, I don't know. Like I don't find it to be. Um
What's interesting is when I was single and I was dating, the reactions that I would get from guys on first dates were actually very positive when
hmm,
I would curse. And they'd be like,
interesting.
"Oh, you're not afraid to curse. You're not afraid to eat." Because I was like, I
Oh, I
wasn't,
do too. I ate.
no, I wasn't like the,
I
the
ate a whole
girl in the
pizza one time on
movie.
a date.
Is
It was
are
hilarious.
there girls out there who actually just order a salad on their first date? Because that sounds awful.
I don't
But
know.
I
But
mean,
I
if they
think a
actually
lot of it's
want
like they
to,
don't want to be messy on the first date, but I'm like, I totally finished like practically an
no,
entire pizza on a date, and I just feel
sure.
like
Yeah.
I was like, don't judge me. I actually tell them, I was like, please don't judge me. I was like, I haven't eaten all day. I was like, literally haven't eaten all day. I was like,
But it's funny because I would actually get very positive reactions of like, oh my God, like you're a girl who curses, like you're so cool, you're so, and they would think I was so cool. You know, that was before they got to know me and
yeah,
realized it's crazy.
you're
And then I started dating my husband, and he was like the first guy who had a real adverse
uh,
reaction to my cursing. And I was like, the fuck is wrong with you? Like, no. I was like, I think that you're the one, but I need to be able to curse. This is just who I am. I
look,
can't.
but I mean, he accepted that. So like, it's not like it wasn't like a deal breaker. He didn't like, he said his preference, which is fine. I think preferences are fine. It's not like I'm gonna mold you or make you feel like I'm not gonna be with you or I'm gonna withdraw my affection from you because of this. Like, that I find
Or
to be
don't make me feel like I'm less in your eyes because of it. Like, oh yeah,
right,
I'll keep you, but I
right,
don't like you as much.
right. Like, I
Like,
don't mind if someone
he didn't
expresses a
make me feel
preference.
that way, but it was just funny because I'd gotten so many positive reactions. And then
Right.
this guy who I'm pretty sure is the one is like, I think cursing's sloppy. And I'm like, I
You're
think you're wrong.
like, it's
Fuck
like,
you.
it's funny because it's for me, I'm like, preferences don't bother me because if someone says to me, like, oh, I usually go for blondes. Okay. I mean, I'm a brunette. It's fine. Like, it doesn't bother me that you prefer that. You might like my personality in the end and not care. So for
Mhm.
me, and that's exactly like what happens where it's like, it's a preference. But if someone's like, oh, you have to change this about yourself, I'm like, well, this is a part of me. It's similar to like, if I was to meet, like, I'm not into smokers. So if I met someone that was a smoker, I'd be like, that is a deal breaker for me. I'm not into that. And I don't mean to make them feel bad. Like, this is just a preference for me. Do your thing.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to go make you feel bad. Like, oh, that's terrible. You shouldn't do that. It's your life. You can do whatever you want. But I'm just saying it doesn't work for me. Like, that's it. Um, so I know you don't have kids yet, but so I have a son. And so my thing is like, I do censor myself with cursing around him just to be respectful of the fact that he's a young. I know when he's grown up, he's going to be like an 18-year-old boy cursing. Like it's part of society. But I find it interesting that parents come down on their kids with like anatomy parts and act like they're curse words. Like for me, I just tell my son like, this is a vagina, this
Mhm.
is a penis. Like I use the anatomy words because I'm like, this is what you're gonna learn in health class. Like this is what we use to describe what these parts are. But like to tell to tell a boy like this is your pee pee, and then he's like what 10, 12 years old saying like kids are gonna make fun of him. Like I was like, this is not realistic. Like I just or like butt. Like it's funny. I thought about it and I was like, you can say butt, like as long as you don't use it to call someone like a butthead. I was like, you can describe like I don't need you to call somebody a name. But if you say like your butt, like it doesn't bother me because I find like we use butt in everything. Like I feel like that's just a commonplace word now. And I'm not teaching him like ass, but it's like your butt, your bottom, whatever. But I find that I'm like, I don't know why parents feel so uncomfortable just mentioning like what these body parts are and they treat them like it's a bad word. I'm like, it's not a bad word. Like I know it makes you uncomfortable to hear it from a 5-year-old because it's a more, I guess, sexually like we immediately as adults think of it as like, "Oh, it's a sexual term," but he's not using it like that. He's just
Right.
saying what the body part is. Just talk to him like, normal.
And exactly. And that's part of the problem and part of the cycle that we want to break is you want to teach them penis, you want to teach them vagina, you want to teach them breasts or boobs, or you want to teach them butt,
Right.
because otherwise, then anything that's forbidden automatically becomes, you know, hyper like interesting to somebody, right? Pandora's box, whatever.
Right.
Anything that's forbidden. And so when you do that, especially to words that describe body parts, we're automatically over sexualizing it for a 5-year-old. So you're unintentionally having long term consequences. And when
Right.
you over sexualize like breasts of a woman, then that automatically can, this is what leads to like unfair dress codes in schools and
Right.
what leads to boys thinking, oh, well, she's being distracting because her breasts are out, right? It has
Right.
nothing
Right.
to do with me, but it's her problem because she
Right.
should cover up. And so that's part of the issue of like considering these dirty words. They're
Right.
not. This
Right.
is the anatomical word. They should learn it. They should know that it's okay to call it what it is, because otherwise you're over sexualizing a part and you're actually doing more harm than good.
Right.
What your child doesn't think of their penis as sexual at five
Right.
years old. If you call it a penis, they don't think of it. If
Right.
you call it a pee-pee and say, oh no, you can't see a girl's and a girl has something different that's secret or whatever you
Right.
say,
Right.
then they're going to be like, oh, why is that? Why is it only for adults? And now all of a sudden they're creating this unhealthy
Right.
narrative in their head as they grow older and are exposed.
Right. They're making it a bigger
I think
deal when it should be more.
the real words.
Because they're making it a bigger deal when it really should be more matter of fact. And the
Exactly.
same thing with like, say and this happens all the time, right? When a parent accidentally says a curse word in front of their kid, right? You say the F word in front of your kid picks it up, asks you what that is, and then parents panic. I mean, they will make up things and for me, I'm like, it's okay to make a mistake, right? Like, you are human. Okay, no one said that you're going to be a perfect parent. It
Yep.
happens to the best of us. And all you have to do is sit your kid down and be like, that's an adult word. That's for when you're a grown up. That
Yeah.
word you're not allowed to say until you're a grown up. That's it. Just tell them what the rule is. And that is the rule. The rule is that word can't be used until you're a grown up. And if you just talk to them matter of fact, kids pick it up. But if you make it a big deal, like, "Oh, don't you ever say that again." Guess what they're going to do? They're going to say it
Yep.
again because they're like, "Oh, I got a reaction. I'm going to do this. I'm going to try this one more time." Instead of doing all that, you just look at them and be like, "Baby, listen. This is a grown up word. Can't use it yet. So mommy can say it because mommy's a grown up, but when you're a grown up, you can say it. You're not a grown up yet. And so, I mean, just I feel like parents panic too much. I just feel like we need to relax. We are not supposed to be perfect. I'm gonna do a whole episode on this. Parents.
You should. Well,
I
and
was
for
like, parents drive themselves nuts.
yes,
Yeah, it's a whole thing. But
record, I think that parents who allow themselves to be human are more perfect parents. If you want to put the label perfect on it, because you need to teach your child how to be human.
right,
When we taboo things and make it seem like, oh my God, mommy can't make a mistake, then those children are going to grow up again with unhealthy values of like, oh my God, I can't make a mistake.
right.
Like, they're going
And
to
then
grow up.
you know what it is? It feeds
They're
into the biggest insecurity that people have. You know what that insecurity is? I'm not good enough.
or fear of failure.
I can't meet these perfect expectations. That's why I'm like, anytime I mess up, my kid's 5 years old, but anytime I mess up, I'll be like, I'm sorry. Like, I will say I was like, mommy messed up. I'm so sorry. I told my son the other day, I said, we
Oh,
don't say
geez.
hate. I said we don't say hate. We say we don't like, because like I feel like hate is such a strong emotion for a child. So I'm like, we don't say hate. We say we don't like. And so I caught myself the other day being like, I'm like, oh, I hate that or something. And he goes, mommy, he said, you said hate. We don't say hate. I was like, you're right. I was like, mommy made a mistake. You are so right. I totally just taught you that, and I totally messed that up. But it's like, it's fine. I was like, I actually get happy that he holds me
Yes,
accountable
I was
because
gonna say you should feel good about that.
yeah, I love that. I think it's the cutest thing actually. I'm just like, oh, I mean, you're listening.
Yes.
But yeah, so I don't know, but it just makes me laugh because I think it's we just think if parents are like funny. They think if their kid's perfect, then that means that's a reflection of them being perfect. And I just was like, we're all flawed, right? Like, to err is human, like that is a thing. And I find that it's to be more vulnerable actually shows how, like, I find it's endearing. Like, I find it endearing to be vulnerable and to be like, hey, I'm human, I mess up. Like, for someone that's going to be perfect, I'm immediately turned off by that. I'm like, listen, there's nobody that's perfect in the world. You can just stop with that. It's fine. It's like,
I agree.
so my last and final question, do you think a woman could be both classy and curse?
Oh,
The
fuck
final.
yeah.
Oh, that's the best answer of the night.
It's funny. My sister sent me something tonight, and I have never felt more understood in my life. And she said, this is the most accurate description of me as a person.
Okay.
So it says, not all girls are made of sugar and spice and everything nice. Some are made of adventure, dark chocolate, intelligence, cuss words, and courage.
Absolutely. Oh,
And
I
I'm
love
like,
that. You're
hell
explaining that to me.
yes.
Like, that's me. That's me in a package with a bow on top. I was like,
Exactly. I mean, why can't we? Why can't I, dress up in a business professional suit with pumps and, my hair pinned back in a bun and walk into a presentation and say, we're going to fucking do this. And
absolutely.
classy as hell. Or why can't I be the CEO or an entrepreneur of my own company or going on a first date, at a nice restaurant and drop the word shit? I
You
don't
know
understand.
what's funny? Like, I literally, when I was writing this, I was like, I could literally be in a room with the Queen of England and like freaking impress the shit out of her. I
Yeah.
could be like Dundee, be like hello, do the whole curtsy. I could do all of it. I could nail it, right? And like I always tell people, I'm like you know how like when girlfriends or boyfriends are like, oh, you're gonna meet my parents. Like, are you nervous? I'm like, man, I'm good at parents. I'm so good. I'm so respectful. I'm so like I'm good at that stuff because I that is a part of me. But the other part of me is I can go out with my friends and be like, damn, he is fine as shit. Like I could say that and be like, still me. Like that's still a part of me. I could be having fun, dropping a curse word. Like the other day, like somebody cut me off and I was like, oh, fucking asshole. Like, and that's it. Like that's for me. I was in the car by myself. I say for myself. It's
Mm-hmm.
just fine. It made me feel good. I was like, I feel like I got out the frustration that this man just put me through. And then that's it. But does that mean that I can't freaking, you mean, you see me at work, I do the presentations, I do this, I put on my professional face. It's a thing. But I feel like women can be both. They are not mutually exclusive. Like you don't have to be one or the other. And I just need people to like normalize that in their brain. So any woman out there that's listening, you can be both. It's a thing. It's like
Amen to that. Seriously, because we are women, we are human, and
mm-hmm.
we're badass, and we should own
Yep.
that.
Yep.
So I think that all of the things can be true, and all of the things should be true, and we need to stop trying to put us in boxes.
That amen to that. I'll tell you this, like the one thing I want to leave with is I think, men give themselves a lot of grace to do these things, but I
Yep.
want to say you do know that we were created with the same brain. Like your brain is not superior to our brain. So if you feel like it's okay for you to curse here and there, guess what? We got the same tendencies, you
Yep.
know. Some women, suppress it and they don't like to, curse. More power to you. Do what feels comfortable for you. This isn't like a thing to be like, oh, we're gonna shame you if you don't curse. No, just be comfortable doing whatever you want to do. But at the
Just
same
don't say
time,
when you do curse.
yeah, but this is for the women that are like, they feel a little less than because they do so. You're not less than nobody. You're smart, you cuss, like you just said, you got courage, you're like dark chocolate. I'm all for that. It's like with that being said, Roshni, thank you so much for sharing your experiences and insight with us. That was so much fun to do. I'm sure this won't be the last time you come on. I've definitely enjoyed hearing your thoughts on the topic, and I'm sure our listeners have too. So, listeners, be sure to subscribe to the podcast and our channel. Give us your feedback, and I hope to catch you next time. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for having me.